On August 6, 1945 at 8:15 a.m., the sun rose a second time over Hiroshima. The first light was natural. The second was human-made, an explosion brighter than 1,000 suns. In that instant, the modern world was born, and so was a nightmare. This is Hiroshima, the city where the atomic age began. Atomic bombs were used only twice in human history. One of them, the very first one, was dropped exactly here in Hiroshima, more or less 600 meters above the same point where we are right now. This one bomb erased an entire city from the map. And not only that, its impact also lasted for many years afterwards. In today's video, I want to remember what happened here in Hiroshima, because nowadays, unfortunately, it seems to be more important than ever to remind us of the huge and intense destruction one single atomic bomb can have. But why did it even happen here in Japan? How was Japan involved in World War II? And especially, why did it happen exactly here in Hiroshima, of all cities of Japan? Hiroshima wasn't Japan's largest city. It wasn't the capital, but it was a crucial military hub, home to an army headquarters, a communication center, and industries supporting the war. For American planners, Hiroshima offered something more, a city untouched by earlier bombings, a clear slate where the weapon's power could be fully measured. And so the city of 350,000 people was chosen to demonstrate the most destructive weapon ever created. But let's continue to talk about the atomic bomb here in Hiroshima that killed more than 200,000 people. Also, again, most of them being civilians. When you walk through Hiroshima, you would never ever imagine the nightmare that happened here. Today, you can see Hiroshima as a very modern city. The bomb was dropped here a bit more than 80 years ago. It's not that much time. However, the city is very beautiful, honestly. Today, it is modern. It feels new, and it is, because this one bomb erased the entire city and it had to be rebuilt and repopulated completely from scratch. That ruin here behind me is called the Atomic Bomb Dome. It represents the industrial hub that Hiroshima was before they dropped the bomb here. Hiroshima was important at that time. There was an industry that produced weapons, parts for planes, and therefore it had a huge military importance for the Imperial Army. It was also the seat of the Second Japanese Army at that time, and therefore an important target for the US soldiers for both strategic reasons, but also a good target to demonstrate the power of the US weapons at that time. It was exactly above that dome, more or less 600 meters above the dome, where the atomic bomb exploded. And nowadays, this is a memorial. And together with the Memorial Park, which is on the other side of the river, this place here is meant to remember the 6th of August, 1945, and the impact the atomic bomb had. This whole preservation project here was financed only by donations that came from people all over the world that saw the importance of remembering this one single day and its impact. On August 6, 1945, the B-29 Enola Gay released the bomb. It fell only 44 seconds. And it killed about 200,000 people. It is hard to estimate the real number, because those that miraculously survived this bomb eventually died later on the long-term effects the atomic bomb had. The fireball reached thousands of degrees Celsius. Buildings disintegrated, people were vaporized. Some, leaving nothing but shadows, burned into stone. There's a plaque right here behind me, which, in my opinion, has a very sad message. Actually, the message is beautiful, but let me read it to you. In order to have this tragic fact known to succeeding generations and to make it a lesson for humankind, the reinforcement work of the ruins has been done by the contributions of many people who desire peace within and out of the country. The ruins shall be preserved forever. In my opinion, it is so sad, because nowadays we hear more and more in the news that more and more countries have atomic bombs. More and more countries seem to be threatening each other again after everything that has happened. And I feel like we are closer to a third world war than ever before. It is terrifying, to be honest, and it feels like memorials like this one here, they don't have any value anymore. They are just being forgotten, and that is why To me, it is extremely important to create these kind of videos. We have to remember our past and finally learn from it. The people of Japan, and especially here of Hiroshima, never forgot what happened here, and they make sure to keep remembering it and to keep telling this part of our history. There are several memorials here. This is a whole memorial park to remember the impact of the atomic bomb. Let's explore a little bit more the memorials and also the museum of Hiroshima. We just entered the National Peace Memorial Hall. It's a museum that is free to visit, and it talks about the history of the atomic bomb and all the impact it had afterwards. It is very impressive and interesting, and the most impactful room for me was a circular room that had lots of tiles on the wall, and these tiles represent an image of what Hiroshima looked like after the drop of the bomb. It feels like you are in the center, and you have like a 360-degree view of the city at that time. But there are also videos of people talking about their experience, survivors of the bomb. The day the bomb was dropped, 70,000 people more or less died immediately, but until the end of the year, in December 1945, more or less 140,000 people have died, either immediately after the dropping of the bomb or by its effects. The number is an estimation. It is hard to know how many people exactly were there at the time of the dropping of the bomb, because everything got destroyed. If you were wondering how the city got destroyed by one bomb that exploded 600 meters above the ground, well, the bomb emitted a lot of things, a lot of energy, radiation, and a heat wave that was around 3,000 to 4,000 degrees Celsius. So you can imagine that this heat wave alone was enough to completely burn down the city. However, some people survived, but surviving was a cure itself, because a lot of them had trauma that was hard to overcome, and a lot of them had a long-term impact. The risk of cancer was extremely high. A lot of people had scars and other appearances on their skin that marked them as survivors of Hiroshima, that were also called hibakusha. And these people often faced other problems. They were seen differently in this society. They were having a hard time to find employment as well. They were facing lots of discrimination just by their appearance, and due to this appearance, people knew they were the victims of Hiroshima. But how did Japan even enter World War II? It was caused by their search for empire and by their search for raw material. In the 30s, Japan already invaded China because they were in search of raw materials such as iron, coal, and most importantly, oil for their rapidly growing industry. At some point, the United States sanctioned Japan, and Japan decided to answer with war. They attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941. And that also marked the moment where Japan entered World War II, but also where the US finally entered World War II. Japan and Germany at that time had a lot of things in common. They had quite a similar ideology. Germany wanted to gain more and more power in Europe, and Japan tried to do the same here in Asia and the Pacific. Japan's leaders at that time saw it as their fate to have power over East Asia and the Pacific. And both Japan and Germany had authoritarian governments. Both governments believed that their country was born from a superior race. So they thought themselves better and thought they were the ones that should lead the territories. The idea behind dropping these two atomic bombs here in Japan was to make Japan surrender. Japan was the last country that has not surrendered to the Western allies. And dropping the two bombs was the easiest, fastest, and cheapest way to end World War II. The United States said that they could have also invaded Japan with their army. However, that would have caused way more deaths amongst US soldiers and also Japanese soldiers, but it would have also been way more expensive and probably also taken much longer. This is how the US justified dropping these two atomic bombs here. However, obviously, the human cost of dropping these two bombs was extremely high. US soldiers were saved, but here in Hiroshima, in Nagasaki, So many civilians died, and the question is, was that really worth it? Some people criticize that dropping these two bombs to end World War II was not necessary. Japan would have probably surrendered anyway. However, that's critics. We don't know what would have really happened if they wouldn't have dropped these two bombs. People say that the US used those bombs to, first of all, demonstrate their power, and second of all, to gain foothold here in Japan, to use this as a base for future wars, such as the war in Vietnam. However, when those two bombs were dropped, only a few days later, on August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered finally to the Western Allies. Japan was forced to surrender, not only because of the bombs that destroyed entire cities, it was also that their army was extremely exhausted, and the Soviet Union declared war on Japan on August 8, 1945. With that, there was no hope of winning this war anymore. The Japanese emperor spoke to his people directly. He said that Japan would surrender immediately to the Western Allies, and with that, the end of World War II was finally sealed.
The atomic bomb dome remains as a scar. The eternal flame burns until the last nuclear weapon is gone, and children send paper cranes as symbols of hope. But Hiroshima is more than a memory. It's a warning.
After seeing the destructive power that an atomic bomb has, a lot of countries panicked. They realized how quickly an entire city and theoretically even an entire nation could be erased from the map. So a lot of countries started to sign peace treaties. They promised to not build atomic bombs. However, today we know of officially 9 countries that own atomic bombs. And these are France, the United States, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, China, Israel, Russia, and North Korea. Most of these countries are not really known to be the most peaceful ones. The tensions that we feel today are more severe than ever. Just a few weeks ago, I listened to the radio in Hamburg, Germany, my birth city, and they were talking about that on that day they were practicing, the police and the army was practicing how well they would work together in case of an emergency, in case Germany would get attacked, and the police as well as the army would have to defend the country. It is extremely frightening. We hear these kind of news more and more all over Europe.
Hiroshima is both a graveyard and a lesson, a place where humanity revealed its power to destroy and its ability to rebuild. Among the monuments of peace, one question lingers. Have we truly learned from Hiroshima, or is history still waiting to repeat itself?